Welcome, everybody, to the February 2026 DRC meeting. This time I'll call the meeting to order. The DRC is a subcommittee of the Historic Zoning Commission. The meeting is informal and designed to guide applicants through the process of obtaining a certificate of appropriateness or a COA for projects within the city's historic districts in light of the Historic District Design Guidelines. Applicant participation in DRC meetings are voluntary but highly recommended. Changes made or suggestions taken by the applicant based on the discussions with the DRC are the applicant's choice, but DRC makes no representation as to whether any changes or suggestions made during the meeting will be approved by the voting body, the Historic Zoning Commission. We have seven items on this afternoon's agenda. When your item is called, please introduce yourself, generally describe your item in 2 to 3 minutes. You'll come up to this table here, make sure the green light is on the microphone, please. First up, discussion of signage, a vertical blade sign at 99 East Main Street. Sean Sullivan is the applicant. Good afternoon. Good to see you again.
See you guys. Cool. Been about a good year and a half, but Sean's not here, so I'm Frank. I'm going to be representing Coolmar. Yeah, our main goal is to get some feedback on changing our sign. Is it on? Now can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Our main goal is to change our sign. Right now we have the one sign on the front. It's kind of sunken back. It's really hard to see from the other coming from Franklin Road and stuff like that. You literally have to drive past the restaurant and turn around. So our main goal is to maybe get a blade sign, a vertical blade sign installed right on the corner, just to add more visibility from all sides of the street.
Okay. Let's hear from staff on their comments on this application. Thank you.
So a vertical blade sign is proposed on the 99 East Main building. The signage is proposed to be 18 feet tall, 20 inches wide, and 10 inches thick. Lettering is proposed on all 3 sides of the sign. No sign lighting is proposed within this application. The vertical blade sign area is recommended to be the vertical blade sign is recommended to be placed at the corner of the building or at a change in massing near the corner of the building. The proposed sign area and placement of lettering on 3 sides of the sign does not meet the guidelines, as the sign area would include the third side and be a total of 45 square feet. Additionally, lettering is not traditionally seen on the vertical blade sign on the third side in historic districts. While this generally appears to meet the guidelines except for the sign area, due to the high visibility and impact the signage may have, staff has requested that the signage be submitted for review and approval by the Historic Zoning Commission for feedback on the size, scale in relation to the building, and lettering placement on 3 sides and placement in relation to the building corner. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone on the commission want to start us off with some comments?
Sorry, I have a question for staff. With the size they have here, if they just took the third side off and had it just be the 2 sandwiched together, would that meet the guidelines?
Yes, if there was no lettering on this third side that you see you would see coming from First Avenue North, that wouldn't count as the sign area.
Okay, so it's not even just the depth of it, it's the fact that there's writing on one side?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else, Holly? Or reaction to it after that?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it it seems like it mostly meets the guidelines other than the additional writing. And it looks like the lettering on the side is saying something different than the front and the back. So I don't know if that would maybe count as more of like a tagline, or if it would be considered 3 complete signs.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay. Anybody else? I think the guidelines talk about position on the building, and it's supposed to be near a corner. This building has this negative corner design where it has no corner. But I think it's really, the intent is that it's at the intersection of some sort, I think. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay.
Couple questions, Mr.
Sure,
Chair.
sure, Kathy.
And mainly a question to staff too. The projection off the building, is that like 6, 7 inches?
So the recommended,
Delineate that.
I believe in the application, the projection is
8.
2 feet 4 inches.
Yep.
And the guidelines recommend maximum projection of 3.5 feet from the building facade.
Okay. My other question too is, it is not backlit.
It does not note any illumination in the
That
application.
would be my question to the applicant, is intent to
As of right
backlight
now,
it?
we don't have any lighting on it. I mean, we would love to put lighting, but I don't know if that fits guidelines. We would have to look into that. But if it doesn't fit guidelines, we would, just wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I think the lighting has to be external.
Mm-hmm.
But I was looking at some of the pictures later in the package, and there's a good-sized street lamp next to this in
Are
the
we
in the
reviewing
actual
the street
pictures.
lamp as well?
It's already there. I think
Okay.
it's a
Oh, street
Franklin.
lamp.
There it
Yeah,
is.
yeah, yeah.
There it is.
Okay. No additional lighting on the building, though, of the sign. Okay.
Yeah.
And then just a comment in general, I think the third signage on the end detracts from your restaurant name. It's a bit busy, in my opinion.
Okay.
I don't mind that it's not there. It's too much lettering.
Okay.
Brian?
You know, what I'm curious to know is that on the Harpeth Square, there is a blade sign on Harpeth Square. Do we know what size it is? As far as, and we're talking about 18 feet on the blade sign in question, but what is the one at Harpeth Square?
Don't have the specifications today, but if you can kind of see between the 2 stories,
It seems smaller to me as far as the not being 18 feet in length. If we were to approve something coming into this scenic corridor into town, I don't think I'd want to see something larger than what's on the Harpeth.
There's another on the.
There's one on First Bank, I believe, as well. Is that what it is?
Yeah, there's
And
one
towards the
just
Circle.
just further down the street, right on that building there, as well.
Or First Horizon.
Yeah, First Horizon. So I knew it was on First Horizon's building, but I wasn't sure that the sign said First Horizon.
And I wanted to ask, the guidelines say not to have it below a window header, but is it below the window header of the entry? I'm just looking at the drawing besides that doesn't show it, but if you look at the drawings, it does.
Now, what does the guideline say again?
It says, do not place it below a window header. And I'm just talking about the one on the entry, because that's a taller glass.
Yeah, it's curious kind of language because there's
It
one-
almost appears that the window header is under that walkway, so it doesn't align face to face over a window header, so, but it does intercede the stonework trim on the entablature of the brick, sort of, or the brick entablature, so it does cross over an architectural feature of the building, whereas I think First Bank and Harpeth did not intercede that, it stayed within that little architectural feature.
Yeah, if it were to be approved, I would like to see it smaller.
And I think it would still accomplish, the goal of people being able to see you from different directions. And I think without that lettering on the third side and smaller, you're going to accomplish that. I think it would be eye-catching, visible. and effective.
So are you suggesting staying in the size as the Harpeth size? And then get rid of like the tagline part, the middle part?
I'd like to know what that is. So if we could find out what that is, that would give us more information
Yeah.
in making a decision.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's just some metrics when you come in for an approval to know, how tall this building is next to that one, because it's a scale thing, really, is what we're getting at. That one on the Harpeth might be 22 feet tall, and we'd go, oh, never mind, if you want 18, great. But we're just not sure, because there's, the best kind of gauge we have is what's existing. We can go, well, we know what size that is, but in terms of proportion with the building, but we don't actually know the measurements.
Yeah, the height of the building matters, so.
And the Harpeth's a lot,
I
many
wouldn't
more
say,
floors.
Yeah, go run with the one at the Harpeth. But the lettering on the end, I don't care for. I think it just makes it loud for a historic district. And then I think, I'm hearing from the other people, a bit smaller for that space.
Does the sign that's there now stay?
No.
Okay.
It would be
in-
removed.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the guidelines say that once you have a blade sign, you
That's
have
it.
to lose
Yeah.
the other sign type.
And I don't,
And the whole point of us going to a blade sign was because I believe we cannot get an additional sign on the other side. Because we just wanted to duplicate what we already had on the other side.
I don't, I think the lettering is different too, because it says rooftop, which doesn't seem like it's the name of a business. It seems like it's a place, which is
So the
weird.
other sign it says rooftop.
Does it say
Yes, it
rooftop on
says
the one you
Glomar
have now?
Seafood Restaurant plus rooftop bar.
Let's see. Yeah, it's just so small that the name stands out.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, ma'am.
Looking at, briefly finding the approvals for the Harpeth Square signage, it appears it's 13 feet tall.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be curious to know what the bank sign is too. Again, these are both taller buildings than this one, which is this is a generous 2 stories. I'll say that. But I think that the scale of the other 2 buildings is quite a bit.
Mr. Chair, I have another question too for applicant. Did I hear you say that this is one of 2 signs? You're going to put another one on the
No,
other?
this is the only sign
The
that
only
we were allowed
sign,
to do.
okay, good. Thank you.
He was saying this was in lieu of, because he can't have another
Correct.
of the sign he has, a
On the
duplicate.
other side.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time that we approved the first sign for this building. And I remember the board being very particular about trying to, make sure that the signage, as you come into town, it's a scenic corridor into our historic downtown, that you're not overwhelmed by signage. And one thing that would be nice to see, and maybe you could self-impose it on here or something, of what the other signage looks like too, on the building with the blade sign. So we can kind of get an idea of the entire signage facade.
Are we allowed to get, because I know this current sign was actually administrative approval.
Well, we voted on that sign, I remember it.
Oh, did you? I know we went to a couple meetings and then things went a different ways, and then we just went through administrative approval.
That sign came for a vote before the
Oh,
commission.
awesome. But
But I'm talking
are we
about
allowed to
not
have
your
another
sign.
sign just like that on the other side?
Not your
though?
sign, but the other signs that are on the building, just something so we can get an idea of what it all looks like together.
Almost like this picture here, but with your sign superimposed on it.
Also, too, I would ask the applicant looking at that image right there, the brick has distinct patterning on it. And so be mindful of where you place that sign over the brick patterning.
Okay.
We were careful not to impede some of those brick entablature designs with signage, and therefore all the other signs you see that are mounted on the building are within that little brick pattern area. And this one being vertical, blade-ish, is definitely the only one. It's pretty significant. So I think it's a good suggestion to look at what's on the whole building as a whole and see how your sign features itself within the rest of them.
I agree with most of what everybody has said. I mean, the sign mostly falls within the guidelines, minus kind of the rib lettering there. But I think it's, even though it meets the size, I think being considerate of kind of the scale of the building would be helpful. And I know, I mean, your job's to get as much as you can because it's visibility, right? But just trying to be thoughtful and what's best for kind of downtown and being in proportion and scale with the size of your specific building, I think would be important and get you a better outcome in terms of preservation. So,
One more
Yeah.
question.
yes, ma'am.
It just occurred to me, you're going to remove, on your drawings, it indicates removing the original entry sign over the door. What about the lighting? Does the lighting remain?
Never thought of that, but probably be removed because it's not gonna be shining down on anything.
Be nice to see, think about that and
Okay.
see what you would recommend, because concerning removing it, you know, you don't want to deface the brick. Certainly removing the electrical would involve a lot more, you know, defacing the brick possibly and having to repoint it and things like that. So I'd like to see what you would consider. And it is a full, almost the full panel too, so it might come off quite easily. So I would be careful, describe how it is to be removed
Okay.
so that it would be the minimal amount of damage to the brick. And if there were damage, it would be needed to be repaired.
Good. Anything else specific?
No?
Okay, I appreciate you. Thank you
you.
so much.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Let's go to item number 2, discussion of new construction and accessory structure at 121 3rd Avenue North. Aaron Rogers. Make sure your green button's on if you'll introduce yourselves, please.
Yeah, my name's Aaron Rogers, 906 Studio, and I'm here with owner of Mission Cigar, JT McCraw. And he has an existing business at 121 3rd Avenue North, the Mission Cigar business. It has an existing patio, and we're proposing covering that patio because he'd like to have it usable during inclement weather for patrons so they can enjoy that space. And so what we're proposing is building out a gabled form roof to the existing patio structure that exists there.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, let's hear from staff. Elizabeth, please.
Thank you. So this application proposes a covered patio behind the building located at 121 3rd Avenue North. The lot features a simple frame building with minimal detailing. The covered patio would be considered an accessory structure, and it is proposed to be placed behind the principal building on the existing rear patio. The proposed size of the covered patio is 985 square feet, and the footprint of the principal building is 1,934 square feet. So the proposed patio, covered patio and accessory structure would be 50.9% of the footprint of the building and should be reduced to meet the guidelines recommendation for an accessory structure so as not to exceed 50% of the principal building footprint. The materials proposed include wood beams, 5E metal roofing, and translucent 5E panels that appear to be a polycarbonate material. The use of a translucent 5E panel is not supported by the guidelines. While the design of the structure is simple with an exposed truss design on the rear-facing gable, feedback about the design of the structure and if it is complementary to the design of the principal building would be appreciated. There are not many examples of existing structures that are similar to what is proposed, and what staff has seen most similar to this is carports, which typically feature enclosed gable designs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. Anybody have any feedback on this one? Got, so these posts that are existing, are they tall enough now, or are they going to have to be extended, replaced?
Yeah, they're currently tall enough now that we
Okay.
would add that perimeter beam system to
Okay.
lay out the trusses.
And I agree with staff on the trusses. That kind of scissor truss design is a little more kind of ornamented than kind of a simple, something simple you'd see on a house. And it is, even though it's a commercial property, it's definitely a residential structure, right? So just keeping that as simple as possible, very simple trusses. They made note of these end gables being open, and typically they are enclosed. Is there a specific reason you can't enclose them or don't want to?
I think, and JT, I'll let you speak to it, but we're okay with.
Open to
closing
that?
those off.
Okay. And then they mentioned the footprint being a little too big. So I don't know if there's some way to reduce some of that, whether it's pulling some of the roof back a little bit. I don't know, but I know it's an existing patio, but as soon as you put a roof over it, now it's considered an accessory structure. And is it, if they attach it to the existing house, is that still an accessory at that point?
That would be in addition to the building if they attached it.
Which is still a 50% rule
50% of the historic footprint, yes.
of the historic footprint. So, all that to say, look at what those numbers, it's too much right now, one way or the other. And it may benefit you to keep it detached. It might benefit you to attach it. That's for you to look at.
I
Mary?
think this, Mr. Chair, the staff touched on it, but I think just a metal roof, I've never seen the translucent do anything but look really dirty after about a year. So that would be my comment.
I agree with that. Brian, did you have hand on the button there?
Yeah, I was going to say, I was out walking yesterday down Third Avenue, and I thought, where's that cigar smell coming from?
Guilty.
So, but on Second Avenue, at 240 Second Avenue, there is a pavilion that does have an enclosed gable end on it, and it does have posts, and it was used, I think, by the senior citizens at one time. So, I mean, there's something else in the neighborhood that's kind of like that. I agree with what everyone else has said.
And JT would be open to removing the
Right.
translucent panel. We are concerned about noise after discussing it further after the submittal, so maybe going to an asphalt shingle roof to match the existing home. So that's an option as well, if you'd be more open to that. And then that brings up the question too of whether or not we'd be allowed to have skylights, if you did want some kind of natural light to be, so it's not so dark in that covered space. So that's another question for y'all.
I don't know that we've seen some skylights and accessory structures. Had some proposed on, I don't recall what the guidelines say about it, or if it does say anything.
I know Interior Standards addresses skylights.
Right,
And suggesting it's in the rear of the property.
right. This
and
is,
Not seen from a main street.
and because it's not attached, this accessory structure would be considered non-contributing. So it's from that perspective, it's probably okay. And then the shingle roof, I mean, you're at a 412 pitch. If you all are happy putting shingle on 412, then I think our guidelines support that. I think it's when you get below 4, our guidelines say that
To go.
ought to go with metal. And that's really a maintenance usability thing for you all to decide.
Mr. Chair, I have a question too for the applicant. That was going to be one of my questions, why you picked metal versus a shingle. And then as far as the 9% over the square footage, when I look at the proposed north elevation, you show a bit of an overhang. Maybe you can flush that up and maybe reduce some of that. It might knock off 4%, I'm not sure. But, you have no need for an overhang there other than just how it's traditionally designed. I mean, it's not protecting anyone walking in or anything, but do you also plan to enclose it if it's rainy? Like, do you have like roll down
That's
elements like
been
that?
Obviously in consideration later, not at this point, but just trying to get it, usable when it rains, and people can scoot in the middle, I guess. But that is a consideration future, for sure.
My suggestion would be design for it now, and then do it later if you need to, but give yourself enough space to hide it so it
Sure.
can roll down or whatever it's going to do, whatever feature you pick.
Jen, just to clarify, they're 0.9% over, so less than 1%. Is that correct? Is that what
Yep.
you were going to say? I was like, 9% would be a lot to find. 0.9's a little easier. Yeah. Okay. Anything
One other
else?
question too
Kath?
is, are you planning, I didn't read all the documents, but I did not notice, are you planning to paint any of the existing wood as you bring in new material?
We were not. We were just going to stain the wood.
Okay, to match existing, okay.
Brian, did you have something?
Yeah, the only thing is that I'd like to know how visible this is from that large parking lot, that's next to the farmhouse. I guess that's Farmhouse Antiques. How much of the new structure can be seen, from that? What's it going to look like?
Yeah, we have some views from Third, but we don't, we'll have to create maybe an additional view to show what that would look like.
Are you talking about the public parking? Okay, gotcha, yeah. Because there's a building in between us and that, and the row of trees, two, actually, I think.
There is that small building.
Yeah.
That's true, but, it's small enough that around it you can see,
Yeah.
your property. Thank you.
Anything else? All right.
All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks. Item number 3, discussion of building alterations and site alterations at 240. And I think we have Worker House 2 as the next one, because I think we'll sort of see these in tandem, even though they're two pieces here.
Hello, I'm Brandon Pretty with 906 Studio Architects.
Perfect.
Quick overview, this is pretty straightforward. The two existing worker houses at Harlansdale Farm, looking to renovate those, restore those, allow them to serve as potentially a welcome center for the farm and another small space to just tell the story of the farm, the workers there, and possibly serve as a small office for staff on site.
Okay. Let's hear from our staff on site.
Thank you, and we'd like to thank the applicants for bringing this to Design Review Committee. This is a city project with our Parks Department at Harlansdale, and this application is for the first worker house you see while driving down the main stretch to the main barn. So it's proposed to rehabilitate the worker houses and provide access to the buildings. So a series of building alterations and site alterations are proposed, which we will discuss this evening. For site alterations, it's proposed to expand the existing parking behind the buildings to accommodate accessible parking, and a new walkway is proposed to connect the parking to the rear of the buildings where ramps are proposed as well. The location of the ramps and walkways are appropriate and will be further screened from the front of the buildings with landscaping. Rehabilitation of the buildings will include the repair of the wood siding to be completed with in-kind materials, replacement of the asphalt shingle roofing in-kind, window repair and replacement to match the original windows. A new rear door is proposed to match the original door. A new front porch landing, rear deck, stairs, and railing are proposed to be in wood. And the intent of the design of the railing is to match what is existing at the Hayes House. The guidelines recommend when railing is needed to use a simple design with square balusters. The lighting appears period appropriate, where more visible and concealed in other locations, which is appropriate. And staff would like additional information and to work closely together to track how much materials need to be replaced and how much will be able to be preserved, and additional information about the proposed window replacements, as well as the gutter profile. So that is it for Worker House 1.
Okay, thank you. All right, anyone want to start us on this one?
I
Holly?
have a question for you, Brandon. It looks like most of this is replacing things in kind. Is there a different thing on here that that is more of a design thing that you're wanting us to comment on, or is it more just the railing and the ramp?
Yeah, it's really the ramp and the porches are going to be the pieces that are the most visible and different. Everything else, you're exactly right, just want to replace in kind throughout.
All right, thank you.
Is there, what's the rationale for the wood versus like a concrete stoops? Is it just because that's what was there?
Yeah, just something a little softer, a little more
Basic.
appropriate to what that was. As a worker house, it was a little more simple type of construction. And again, we've established some precedent on site with the work that was done at the Hayes House, and we want to follow that.
Yeah.
One quick piece, if I could add.
Sure.
We've had some more internal discussion where we're showing the stone walkway. I think for long-term, for it to stand up long-term, we're probably looking at that being more a hard surface, paving to match the rest of the ramps. So we did that, and I think we thought about that a little bit and just worried it won't hold up as well, and we'll track dirt in, things like that.
Okay. Now one thing I noticed on this picture of the Hayes house here, I think we approved these wood rails on each side of the stair, and then there's a grab rail was required to kind of be installed after. On these particular houses, I think this applies to both. We'll see the other. You'll have to double check me here if I'm wrong, but they look like there's not enough steps, that you're going to need a guardrail, but you are going to need a handrail. And because of that, I mean, the Hayes house had this language there already, but these houses, because they're such short sets of steps, when you look at the renderings, those railings just look like super beefy and chunky. So if there's ways, if by code you can get away with, hey, we just have a grab rail and there's no horizontals, nothing guardrail-ish, but just handrail, I think it'll just look a little lighter and softer, because replicating that for 2 or 3 steps is just going to feel real heavy scrunched up together. That's my only comment there.
That was going to be my comment. And I know the ones at the Hayes House are white, but more of some kind of natural metal color, I think, would even make them disappear more. Because when you get into those colors, it's baked on and it almost looks like an appliance finish.
Yeah, another thing I was considering as I was looking at it, and I went back and forth, was just a dark steel, simple railing. To get the extensions, and it's got to turn down. Sometimes standing alone, they look a little weird, like not consistent. That was an attempt to do something that sets precedent. It might probably have ended up being a little more visually than it needs to be. So I think you're right. I think a simple metal railing with a dark color is going to visually really kind of disappear.
Yeah,
And we can absolutely pivot to that.
Yeah, and I mean, to me, it's going to make the houses look like they did as best we can, but still meet code. They're just kind of, let them stand out like they did. And then in terms of windows, doors, siding, all that, I hope y'all are going through the exercise of finding somebody that can replicate, like the one window that's missing both the sashes. It's like, if we can get those dead spot on, because if it's just something we're going to order out of catalog, I think you'll be able to look at it and go, one of these is not like the others.
I don't think we're going to order that one out of the catalog.
They'll make them. And then so there's kind of some peculiar things on here which are obviously old, but there's like a 8/12 and another 8/12, and in the middle is a 6/6.
My assumption is the one in the middle is not original, so we would, replace that with one that would match, the 8/12s you're seeing to either side.
Okay.
So we've got a couple instances like that, and the intent would be to replace with original where it's pretty clear, you've got precedent for what was there before.
And on the other house, is in a little better shape than this one, just based on pictures. Are these windows here, any of them salvageable? And try and,
These,
yeah,
I think, and you can see on the north elevation, I feel like we'll be able to do something with those front ones, possibly the west. The ones on the back are pretty rough, and I don't know this for certain. Haven't seen any photographic evidence yet. I'm assuming that was something built later and probably a little more, maybe with a little different materials, so I think that's why some of that's not holding up as well.
Okay.
But again, we'll really dive into that, as we're jumping into design.
understood.
And Mr. Chair, I wanted to ask the applicant, the western walls really got some severe buckling. I drove out there this morning and I don't know how that building's
Yeah.
standing up.
Yeah, I mean,
And
yeah.
would that require a rebuilding of the foundation?
I would be hard pressed to think it's not going to take some pretty significant foundation work.
Yes.
We're scheduling some time to meet out with our structural engineer. I would think that'll be significant, or I'm positive it'll be significant. It's really a matter of how much. Is there enough there that we can shore it and save it, or, is it going to have to be a little bit more? Honestly, I don't know yet. Certainly, our intent is always going to be, to save everything we can as much as possible. But as you can see, it's rough.
Thanks.
I'd also
Kathy?
like to ask applicant too, with regard to saving, you mentioned that, and back to the windows, if you can save the glass or the panes, that might be worth doing. I don't know how, you wouldn't want to put it on the same facade as where you, but if you could salvage some of the panes or maybe some of the mechanisms
Yep.
in it for refurbishing those as well. My other question was back to the ramps.
Mhm.
The porch, the wood porch where the ramp meets up to it, what's your height?
The height of that porch is, I want to say it's about 16, 17 inches. So what we're wanting to do is ease those ramps. If you've got a 20-to-1 slope, you don't need handrails. So that's what we're
Okay.
shooting for, and we're low enough that, this is based on us, we took some spot elevations, so, this is based on reality, and this is what we're anticipating doing.
Yeah, I
And
saw
the-
your elevation note number, but I'm like, I don't know where zero starts, but, yeah, that was my concern. Why no handrails, but you're not required because you're below the height where it's
Yes, ma'am.
called out for. So thank you for that. And I do like the wood, the change to wood there, because it takes it back to that, what the home is, or what it was.
Softer, a little more
Yeah.
residential. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
And since you were talking about the ramps, one thing I'll kind of clarify is, as you bring that ramp up, I'd rather not see a concrete edge there. That's where we want to soften that, kind of cover that with nothing elaborate, but just some low plantings to soften the edge of that sidewalk ramp as it comes up.
Angela, did you have something you look like you might have wanted to say?
No, I just, it's just so exciting to hear what you're doing and the attention to detail to preserve, restore, and, to do all the right things on this building. And I agree about the wood ramp. I think it suits what you're doing here. So, thank you.
And it's my understanding that these buildings used to be up on Franklin Road, were part of the Allen manufacturing plant for their employees, and eventually moved to this location.
That's correct, yeah. Yeah, they were part of a larger subdivision, or a planned subdivision. The Great Depression derailed some of that.
I'm glad to see they're finally getting some attention.
Absolutely. Well, they got
Everything
a
has to
pretty,
be prioritized, doesn't it?
yeah, they got a pretty prominent spot, so.
Yeah.
It's exciting, and they are contributing National Register elements of the site, so it's exciting.
Absolutely. We're excited to be part of it.
Okay, let's go, if everybody's ready, let's go to item number 4, which is the, I don't know, big brother, twin, whatever you want,
Yeah,
the
probably
sibling.
Twin brother. They're not identical twins, but
Anything particular you want to point out on this one for us, Brandon?
No, nothing, I mean, again, very similar approach. This one's in a little bit better shape. You can actually get into it. There's a floor, and we don't have some of the deterioration on the rear. But again, pretty straightforward approach, accessible route off of the new parking spaces, and, ramp into the rear portion that'll still be a vestibule, so we always want to be sure with ADA to meet the intent of the code, we're not bringing people into the back door, and that won't be what we're doing here.
Okay. Staff, you have any comments particular on this one?
So I guess the only applicable comments from this one that are different from the previous one. So on the side wood porches, it's proposed, it's noted to use a composite material, so just some additional clarification on the material here, whether it be wood or composite.
Okay.
That's a good question, and our intent would be for all of it to match. It would be composite, and again, that's consistent with what we did at the Hayes House, where we had the composite decking there.
Okay.
On the back where we have those ramps.
Understood. Any thoughts, anybody on this one?
And when you say composite, just composite wood, is it plastic? I mean, what is the composite material?
Yeah, it's, I guess technically it is plastic. It's like Trex, if you're familiar with that. It's profile of wood decking, sizes of wood decking, edges east, things like that. So it's made to present as wood decking. It's got a little bit of grit to the surface, so it's better if it's wet. Certainly stands up a lot better over time to deterioration. And again, really, probably what drove that was, again, consistency with what we had done at Hayes on the porch and the ramp. But open to alternatives if we need to.
Now, this covered porch on this worker house 2 here, it would remain as is, and it's
Correct. Yeah.
just wood now.
It's actually, I think it's stone now.
It's
Or
stone.
not, I'm sorry, stone. It's concrete now.
It's concrete, okay.
That would remain.
So this would be the side porch on this house, and then on the house we just looked at would be essentially the front door and the side door
Yes,
would have a Trex type material.
that's right. But to be clear, neither of those would present along the drive coming in, because even the front door of house 1 is kind of off to the side, if you remember. They
Okay.
don't really have, there's not a door fronting the drive into the barn.
Yeah, I don't know that our guidelines recommend a plastic or a Trex for decks or porches.
I remember talking about it with Hayes House, because there was kind of a conglomerate of things happening between rock steps and concrete steps and some wood.
Well, we had the wood
Stairs
on the front, the main front porch. Anywhere that had been wood, we came back with wood. It was really on the accessible ramp and to the new kind of porches we built on the back that were to provide accessibility. That's where we used the composite.
Yeah, these 2 houses just have a little more public traffic around all sides. Not that Hayes House doesn't, but it's hard to tell what the front and the back is on this, where Hayes is pretty clear. Well, there's the front porch, and it's a little more prominent.
I'd like to hear from staff if they have a comment on that Trex.
The guidelines do recommend to use wood materials for decks and porches.
Mr. Chair, the thing that I could understand why you might use the wood on these worker cottages and didn't on the Hayes House. The Hayes House is so much bigger structure, and that's really tucked to the back. So for visibility and just, the accessibility was really big. And so I could see why you would do forgiveness on the Trex at the Hayes House, but might second guess doing that on these little cottages because they're so humble and they're almost, the visibility is going to be so great because there's just not that many things to look at.
It's
on
the way in,
house.
yeah.
So,
Well, the other thing about these composite materials is typically, the end grain is not pretty or the profile. And these two houses wouldn't have a picture framed wood deck, all dressed out. I mean, it would look great, but you'd go, it's a little contrived. I'm wondering if a real wood that's like a thermally modified thing, there's products out there that hold up similar to Trex, but a lot better than pressure treated. That might be an option, and you can with confidence say, well, it is real wood. And that might get you within our guidelines and still look good.
Safety-wise, I have found on boardwalks that Trex is slippery than real wood. I guess it's just because of the plastic nature of it. But I've had experience on that. I do agree with what everyone's saying on a real wood product. And I think you can get something that will last and be very lasting. And I actually think about at Bicentennial Park, the overlook, that is a wooden deck. And I don't know what it's made out of, but it's not finished and it's lasting. So.
It usually means it's bad for you. Don't eat it. There's maybe some products out there that can do both things. Get the Parks Department something they don't have to babysit year after year, but that still gets the aesthetic that goes with these houses.
Mr. Chair, my question would be too, is the intent of this finish on it to be a natural wood color, or is it a color? I know Trex doesn't come in a pretty natural wood color. It's a plastic wood color.
Yeah, you can get it in some of those, but the intent here would be for it to look, again, back to the simple language of the whole place would be, natural wood. Even if we sealed it or something, it would be something you'd come back with a light color, clear sealer. You want it to present as pretty natural wood that somebody laid out, planked that out, and
Maybe you could bring us a sample.
absolutely.
Anything else on these two? Kind of back and forth on those. Brandon, anything specific?
No, I think
Okay. Very exciting. Glad you all are doing this and yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much. We appreciate it. See you in a few weeks.
All right, let's go to item number 5 here. Discussion of new construction at 1855 William Campbell Court, Lot 11. Jennifer Lombard. Hello. Good. All right. Yep. Tell us what's new with this one, Miss Lombard.
So based on the feedback.
You got married. It says Ford.
Yeah, well, I kind of just changed it. The
Oh.
creative name, but it was a slow rollout.
Oh, okay. Miss Ford. Thank you. It's pretty quiet today. The mic is.
It was not on, sorry.
Oh, well.
User error. So based, I think, on the feedback that we got at the November meeting, we worked a lot on the massing in the garage on this to kind of get that to read, even though it can't really fully be detached, the way the site works, to get it to read a bit more detached and to give some more balance to the front massing. So I think those are the kind of the pieces that we looked at that we'd like a little feedback on.
Okay.
So part of what you can see we did there was sort of pull that garage roof down, make that a little bit smaller and separate it material-wise and in massing from kind of the main house at the back, which hopefully helps that read a little smaller. And we also widened that front mass a little bit, just again to help that garage feel more subordinate.
Okay. Anything else you want to point out?
I have two options in here
Okay.
for kind of the front elevation tower element. One has a gable and one has kind of a hipped roof, but I'd be curious if there were any thoughts y'all had on preferring one or the other
Okay.
on that.
Let's get staff's feedback here, and then we'll see what everyone thinks.
Thank you. This is the third DRC meeting to discuss the design of Lot 11 at Magnolia Hall. The proposed style is noted as being a Queen Anne building with early colonial revival influences. We'd like to thank the applicant for incorporating past DRC feedback and removing the two-story side porch and balcony elements, as well as working on the massing and design of the garage to better read more like a detached structure. Two options are shown in the application. One option is shown on sheet 5, which features a front-facing gable on the left side, and the second option can be seen on sheet 6, which features a hipped roof and dormer on the left side and a material change in the front tower. The guidelines recommend to design new construction to be compatible with massing, height, proportions, scale, size, and architectural features of adjacent buildings. New construction should complement rather than detract from the character of the historic district. The use of a prominent tower as an entry feature is not seen in the Boyd Mill Avenue Historic District or on other 1.5-story buildings in other districts, and is not a compatible architectural feature in light of the adjacent buildings. While the material change is option 2 reduces the heaviness of this element, the use of the proposed element is not appropriate. The form and massing of the building appear to have improved and better aligned with the guidelines, as the building reads as a 1.5-story building and has distinct breaks in the facade that assist the building in reading as change over time as you move towards the back of the building. The height of the building will be 31 feet, 3 inches from grade to ridge at the front of the building, and the height of the historic mansion is 34 feet, 9 inches from grade. So feedback on the success of the design to the garage to read as detached would be appreciated from the commissioners. A 2/2 light window is proposed, which is appropriate to the architectural style of a Queen Anne. The 3-window configuration in the tower should be restudied to better align with the window pattern seen on Queen Anne's. Additional feedback about the proposed window design, rhythm, and placement would be appreciated. And we greatly appreciate the applicant for returning to another DRC to discuss the proposed changes on Lot 11 of Magnolia Hall. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right. Anybody want to start in
I'll
comments?
start.
Okay, Mary?
I agree with what staff said, and I think we always need to be looking at this in the context of having Magnolia Hall visually in the picture. So when it comes to historic zoning, I would appreciate a comprehensive presentation since this is so near. But I agree with what staff said. I don't think the front entrance makes a cohesive element with the rest of the house.
Okay. Anyone else?
I think you've done a much better job on the presentation of the view from 96 West. I think getting rid of that second floor patio, and making it just look
Yes.
like an elevation of a house. And I think also what you've done with the garage has helped a lot too.
I agree with that. Brian?
Yeah, I do agree with staff on the tower. It would probably be best without the tower. I'd love to see what it looked like with the gable, that you've got the front-facing gable rather than the hip, and what that looked like without the tower. It's just the way it dead ends into the tower from the eave, and it's just something about it. And the way the porch even projects so far out, it actually matches the tower, but not the gable part of the house. So I think it might be more successful for that. I do agree the form and massing has greatly improved. Looks good. The 2/2 windows, I mean, that's what you see on a Queen Anne in many cases. I realize we see a lot of 1/1s here too, but also 2/2 was common. I wanted to ask about the stone. So the stone foundation looks to me like the topography kind of does something very unique here. It looks like on the left side of the house, it slopes down toward the steps. I mean, is that, that's how it's graded?
Yeah, we've got about 9 feet of fall on that lot that goes from the back corner of Glass Lane down to where the kind of the cul-de-sac is on that corner.
And is that the reason that the, I guess what you'd call up to the drip edge where you have the stone is so high? I mean, that almost forms all the way up to that, to the bottom of that window.
Yeah.
And
That
for
was-
foundations, I don't usually see that often. I see it on more modern construction. I know this is modern construction, but, we are trying to do something compatible with the district. So I'm wondering if there was something, but it looks like then that matches what's on the side of the house because of that grade change.
Yeah, there wasn't a great place to stop that, and it does line up with the first floor. It's not above the first floor there. So it actually is, the foundation line is in line with where that first floor level is. It's just that we're sunken into the grade.
So your windows are all the way onto the floor then? They go all the way to the floor?
They're pretty close there, yeah.
This drawing shows the first floor a couple feet below that rock line. So does this elevation, the 3D. We're talking about this. Go to the page 8. Yeah, I'm wondering, ultimately this, it's the 3D renderings that are black and white. Keep going, keep going. Right there. This, the left side of the house is essentially a retaining wall of sorts. I'm wondering if the foundation wall on the left, that's stone, if it came out and became a little site wall in the yard, and then they could cut that grade down just a little bit and have like a traditional skirt board and kind of beneath that window. Just try to get a more traditional relationship between foundation, first floor, windowsill. So it is sort of a modern construct to bring your masonry to the windowsill, at least in this area.
Mr. Chair, if the windows were raised, would that,
I think they look like they're 2 or 3 feet above the floor.
I think,
I
okay.
think they may be a foot. I may have misspoken. They're not much above.
So I'm looking at the front porch floor,
Yeah, and then you gotta
and
step
then the
up.
stone is
I'm talking the ones on that side.
on the left side. Yeah, you have to understand a couple feet is underground there. A
Right.
couple feet of the house is underground.
Right.
So the windows look like they're close to the dirt, but if you're in the house, they're that high off the ground.
Yeah, because we sank this whole thing into the ground significantly.
Yeah. Which I think helps height-wise, ultimately. Otherwise, the garage comes up. Well, the garage doesn't necessarily have to come up, but the whole rest of the first floor would come up out of the ground.
Yeah, I think we're about 30 inches below grade with the first floor at the back corner.
Yeah.
But Mary, you're talking about just raising the window itself so it's not sitting on the brick ledge.
That's right. If
So you
there's a
would give
little
that visual.
air between them,
Sure.
a little
From the
wall
outside.
Yeah,
between
we can
them.
look at
I
that.
agree
Yeah.
with you on that. I think that would read better.
Yeah, like I said, part of
Be a
this
little more
is
traditional.
the house is serving as a retaining wall.
Right,
So, in that side of the house there's no visibility there.
okay.
I'm really trying to get up on the road where you can
Right.
see to not have rock up to the windows.
If you can't see it.
Yeah, but that side of the house, we kind of have a conundrum because it's like, well, we can have them lift the house up or put short windows in, which are going to be a weird proportion, right?
They may not be that short. I'm just talking about like from a design detail to detailing that out, flushing that material on top of the window to the brick is kind of a tricky detail. So if you do a traditional
Yeah.
window detail on it, might ease a little bit better.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering about your head heights too on your windows. So what's on the side, on the front, is that the same or they lowered some? Or is it a smaller window?
I believe those are both 9 feet head heights.
So they match, they're the same.
Correct.
I wonder then why you do have space on the left side, but no space on the front.
They're taller windows in the front. They come closer to the floor in the front.
Okay.
But we could raise those up. I think it was just proportion.
Yeah.
So, but we're
Okay.
happy to take another look at that and
Thank you.
see if we can adjust that relationship.
In the, that left side of the house, that south side, I'm looking at the color rendering, that kind of punched opening, kind of equally spaced, a whole bunch of windows, is sort of a modern thing too. Typically, we're that upper right-hand elevation there, where it's we see pairs, we see two on a wall, but to have four kind of equally spaced is, makes me think institutional a little bit because that's the way they would do an office building when you got suites, right?
Sure.
So if those,
That elevation loses the Victorian-esque feel
Yeah.
to me.
again, this is against a neighbor, so
Yeah.
I don't know that it's that critical. But when you look at the other side facing 96, you go, oh, we've got
Yeah.
pairs and relationships that are typical to historic buildings, and it feels more comfortable on that side. So if there's places you can
Yeah.
tune up the window spacing and make it, I think staff had commented about these windows that are kind of the in between. I assume they're stair windows. Those, we hark on that relationship sometime. Either they go up and they're in the second floor or they're down. Again, I'm not sure I'm that concerned about it because it's in a pocket in an alley between two houses. So I don't know that you see it, but if this were sitting out in the middle of a field by itself, we might have more to say about those.
And the privacy fence is going to have stone, is that correct? Or the
The
little
courtyard wall?
courtyard. I think we'll want to see a really good picture of what that stone is going
Absolutely.
to look like.
Yep.
Um,
And it would be similar to the stone. We selected a stone for all of those houses for the foundations, so we changed sort of size and patterning, but the same stone is being used on the foundations of pretty much all those houses, just to
And-
give some
but
continuity.
When you put it on a fence, it's going to have more visibility.
Do you know what that stone is?
Yeah, it's out on site. It's a Tennessee gray limestone.
Okay.
And we've done, we've sort of played with the size of the blocks a little bit, or how roughly finished it is, so that they don't all look like we just use the exact same stone, but it's basically the same color palette, and it is the same specific
Well,
stone.
when I was driving around the other day looking at Franklin, some of the stone has quite a bit of yellow in it, and I just would want to be sure this didn't.
Yeah, we're happy to bring samples of that.
Yeah.
And, just wanted to say again, we had, was it our third DRC on this? I mean, what you've done with the garage and that side of the
Right.
house is very successful.
Yes.
It is.
Can I ask
Holly?
you a question? Yeah, a couple things. So the garage side that you have on the bottom right, I think that looks really nice now and is a really big improvement. I just had a question about the gable that's right behind the garage on the left, the little sliver of gable that you can see there. What is that? Is there a way we can get rid of that so it's a little bit simpler?
So we pulled the roof down. That is the mass of the building beyond. So if you look like at the floor plan,
That's the house.
It looks like it's just a little piece of it. Is there a way to make it line up or anything so that you don't just see a little bit of that other gable there, or is it?
not without raising, it would have to be still back in line with the garage. And so I
So
think
the
part of
garage
the
would get
reason we're
taller?
doing that was to pull those two things apart. And we sacrificed the ability to have so you see where the lowered roof is on the top left of this plan, that's over the garage. So we don't have space there that we're using as inside space. So if we pulled that down, we would lose kind of all of the space on the backside.
Based on the comments from last time, you mean? Is that was?
The reason we pulled that garage roof
Okay.
down significantly to
Okay.
separate those two. But am I answering the question? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's fine. It would look better, I think, if it didn't have two gables like that really close to each other as far as, I mean, it looks a lot better than it did. So I actually really like this elevation. I was just, if it was possible to not have it like that, I think it would be better. And then another thing, so I love the porch that you have and the curve around there. I think it looks really historic. The entry, I see that the top one is very square and the bottom one does have an arch, but I love having the curve in there. I think that it would be nice if you could keep some sort of arch there to go with the porch, but not have it be pulled out so prominent like staff and everybody else said. That front entry looks a little bit like too much of like a new build, like not historic. But I like the arch detail, so if there's a way to recess that and to make it continue the curve of the porch in other parts of the facade, I think that would be really good.
I like that.
Kathy?
Okay, I think too, looking at the garage with that, I think you achieved what you needed to achieve with the garage and lowering the roof. And it actually, I think it's just that particular 3D rendering, it makes that hip to the roof, the main home, look bigger than it really is, but I think it gives you that detached garage look. So I would support exactly how you have it. I just think it's the rendering that's making it look odd and bigger than it really is. And so I think that's super successful. But I want to talk about the tower. And I've been looking at your images of existing places, and I'm very familiar with the one on the bottom left. And that tower, because of the materiality of it, it's very successful. And I hate to see you lose the tower on this house, but somehow bring a bit of the charm to it that would kind of Victorianize it to go with the porch somehow. But, you've given us some really good examples, and a few of them in our backyard. So I don't know if there's another go-round on the tower, so it just doesn't seem like a double tower. You've given us example of, feature arch entry there on the top left, but with a balcony on it. And then, then the one on the former Omore campus is the double tower. And the attention to the window patterning too, I think you were very close to that, but we've mentioned some of the tweaking and grouping on it. But these are really good images to kind of keep me on board with your Victorian feel, but comments with regarding that tower looks a bit commercial, more, it's true. So I think if you could give us some other options on that make it still identify as entry. Which roof do you like? Do you prefer?
I kind of went back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, when you presented it to us, I'm the same way. It's hard to give a comment on that. You've ultimately had this baby in your hand, designing it and forming it. And so I think it will evolve if you try and reduce the mass on this tower, and it'll still complement it.
Yeah.
Did staff recommend the tower was not appropriate?
Yes, it's not commonly seen on 1.5-story buildings, and even in the inspiration images, it's not a prominent protruding tower. It's recessed or in line with the face of the building.
And we're not considering this a 1.5-story building, are we?
It is, except that tower.
Really? Okay,
Yeah, everything's in the attic.
gotcha.
Yeah, I think that's the difference in the images. Is
That's
all
the
of those are
difference.
2-story except the bottom right. And it's like,
That's where we
okay,
started.
you got a
That's the difference.
2-story with an attic, and then you put a tower on it. This is a 1-story with an attic.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, I agree with staff that, if the tower element went away and just had a flat roof or like a low-pitched roof of some sort, all of a sudden might be more successful. I think there's a geometric thing that I think maybe even Brian hit on where, and Holly alluded to it in some ways, that you've got this porch coming around. Typically it dead ends into your L-shaped piece. Your L shape is back behind where your porch is. So, and I know there's probably no more forward setback, maybe a little because the tower's in it, but you might think about how you might take the mass that's in the upstairs of the tower, transition it over to the upstairs over this bay window, and even give yourself some more volume there by pulling it out a little, just so you can make that kind of traditional connection between porch into the side of some type of front-facing mass. And then depending on how you want to do a masonry entry or just a more simple porch continuation or a flat roof, low roof, whatever, I think that mass just goes away and you can maybe find some of that square footage back. But I think seeing a 2-story tower on a 1.5-story house is, I can think of some rare examples, but they're really small towers. There's a couple in East Nashville that have, they're like 8-foot round rooms, and they're in a corner. Yeah, and they're real unique, and beautiful. But this is more substantial in width, and then it's this Queen Anne style. You've got a little of both things going on, where there's kind of the slenderness of the Victorian kind of porch elements, and then all of a sudden we've got this kind of really massive, heavy piece for this center element. So, and you go back and look at the precedent images, there's weight to some of the houses. What you've drawn feels even more heavy than the upper left-hand's entry, just because it's got really wide legs, and those wide legs go all the way up 2 stories. So there's a lot going on. And then you look at the bottom center image, that whole porch and entry is all the more slender, stick-like pieces. So revisit that. I think I agree with staff. It's too much to have that kind of front entry to be that massive on a 1.5-story house. But I think everything else you've done behind it has helped a ton. I think it's just this front elevation being tweaked for me is the one thing kind of outstanding that I'm like, oh, this just isn't quite there yet. But all the other changes I think look really good. So.
One other comment too I have, if we could go to page, it's the last page in the packet. Page 11, where
Okay.
it shows the mansion and the front elevation.
I thought we included that. I was going to apologize to Mary for not including that.
What?
I thought we'd included that comparison.
No,
I
it's
was gonna apologize earlier.
perfect. I'm very happy to see you play this game, because you still want your home to have a sense of entry, but then it can't play upon the main mansion. And I think looking at these two, when I look at the body of the mansion and I look at the front body box of the house, they're pretty similar in width. So I think, and the tower, the tower does take away, I think, from the main body of the home. And I'm just looking at the story you're trying to tell with this building, and it has historical elements and it has contemporary elements, and they're fighting, and then the tower's right in the middle of it all. And, somebody's got to come out and, defend the fort almost. And by the way, the fountains are lovely at night out there, doing their little job. But I really appreciate this picture, and please keep us updated on how you study that and compare it to the main mansion as far as entry and the way the block of the house is and the elements that I'll attach to it. But thank you very much. Appreciate the height too, showing us the difference in how, that. If one of your renderings, the 3D renderings, when you capture that direction, if you could plop the mansion back in
Right.
that
Yeah,
way
we can show that.
to show how that's still higher, that's the beauty of having that slope in your lot. It's in your favor.
Yeah, and I mean, I know you all have all these in 3D, so I'm like,
Yeah, that's
that
what-
means it's easy to just, even if they're not dressed up renderings, but they're just snapshots from
Right.
96 and go, that's kind of the far off view. The lake's kind of down there, pond, whatever we're calling that. Um, those are the vantage points that we're really trying to be particular about.
Absolutely.
I just really quickly want to go back. Could you go to page 10? And this addresses what Holly, I think, was talking about. So this is a rendering of, this shows a little bit different view than we saw in the 3D. And you can see where the gables aren't competing with each other, where the garage is concerned. And it shows that it is more successful in this view because it looks more like change over time, maybe an addition of the detached garage. So I think, and Kathy, you brought it out too, that it may have been the perspectives of the drawings.
Right.
I think this makes it read much better when you see it from this perspective.
I agree.
Anything else? All right. Thank you so much.
Appreciate the feedback.
Ms. Ford,
Good job.
thank you.
Progress.
I will have to resign the rest of the meeting to my vice chair here, as I have another commitment this evening. So
Mr. Chair, could you call a recess and we'll come back after?
who wants to go to recess?
I will-
All right, let's take let's come back at 5:25. That should give everybody plenty of time, and Mr. Laster will take the reins. And let's do that. Ready? Go. Thank you.
All right, you're going to get back
People do
underway
better
here
with simplicity.
very shortly, within the next 3 seconds.
Seconds.
Everybody can take your seat. We're going to get back underway. Can you hear me now? Thank you. So let's everyone take their seats. Let's have the next applicant come forward. All right, so number 6 on our agenda is the discussion of new construction signage and refuse at 1110 Aldersgate Way. John Gore applicant. John, are you?
I'm not John Gore. John
You're
Gore's
not?
our civil engineer.
All
so
right.
This
Well-
is more architectural, so I'm Jeff
Okay.
Earwood with TMP, the
Jeff,
architects.
welcome.
Thank you.
All right, would you like to tell us a little bit about your project?
Yes, the project went before Historic Zoning Commission last Monday. We had been to a workshop here before with DRC, and so based on feedback and based on the deferral from Historic Zoning Commission, we wanted to come tonight to kind of talk about how we move forward based on, kind of y'all's thoughts, recommendations, and what you saw at the Historic Zoning Commission.
Okay, and staff, would you like to make comments?
Absolutely. So the proposal is at 110 Aldersgate Way, which is the site of the Franklin First United Methodist Church and is on the corner of within the Historic Preservation Overlay. The proposal will mostly be seen from Matt Catcher Parkway. The proposal was deferred at the February Historic Zoning Commission meeting. The proposal includes several options within the submittal that have 2 apparatus bays and a pedestrian entrance on the front elevation. A comment at the Historic Zoning Commission meeting was to have the building reflect the other agrarian buildings on the site, not just the Franklin First United Methodist Church building. The guidelines generally recommend the following for new civic buildings. One should design the architecture elements using a defined base, middle, and cap divisions. Use building materials that create a sense of permanence, such as brick or stone. Use decorative details in a manner that is compatible to those on nearby historic buildings while avoiding direct replication. Design new windows to be compatible with the size, placement, rhythm, and relationship of solids to voids to those of typical historic civic buildings. And several of the options do reflect the other buildings that are seen on the Franklin First United Methodist campus, such as the Daniel McMahon House, several of the outbuildings, and a barn on the property. All of these buildings on the site are simple in form. Some of the proposed buildings reflect the agrarian and rural architecture. Staff would like clarification on the material of the buildings and if they are proposed to be a brick or stone material and the proposed coloring of the building. Then, just wanted to briefly touch on the refuse enclosure. We did Wallace loads. It does not appear that it has changed from what has previously come to historic zoning, and just general guidance that all dumpsters are required to have a separate pedestrian entrance access gate per the zoning ordinance. And it is proposed to construct a monument sign at the front of the building, and monument signs are not recommended within the guidelines and is not a sign type within the guidelines, but this is on the corner of the historic preservation overlay, and the context is along Matt Catcher. But the Historic Zoning Commission ultimately can decide if a monument sign is appropriate in this context or not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And since staff has made comments, I'd like to go back to the applicants with the proposal, if you could bring that up, that shows kind of what the applicant's kind of proposing, and talk about that and see of those designs, what would you like, what do you like the most, what do you like best?
This was our attempt. There was a very short turnaround time between the meeting on Monday night and submitting information for this meeting. So these are obviously very schematic, very conceptual. We were trying to get something to have conversation tonight that might help understand the agrarian feedback, comment, and then the nature that the agrarian, there was a reference to the West Haven Fire Station, and the fact that it contains some agrarian architectural elements. And so there was a little confusion for me, as an architect from the agrarian pieces and parts of the West Haven Fire Station versus what I would typically understand to be agrarian, which is more of what we've kind of sketched here. So again, all for conversation. I think the design as presented is something that both the county and the church, who have had input and say and influence over the design of the EMS station, are both very happy with, the design as it is. And so we wanted to take back any feedback you had tonight based on the information we presented to kind of discuss with them, because they have 1,000, person congregation that have, seen the renderings and kind of bought into the design as is. So there's a little bit of a lift there if we do go to a wholesale redesign. So trying to gauge kind of what you all want to see or would ideally see in an architectural, relook, so to speak. Because based on the design, I think the monument sign had some discussion, but as far as, the masonry elements, and what the guidelines suggest for a civic building, I feel like we've met those. So just
Okay.
trying to get some feedback.
All
understanding.
right, thank you very much. So let's go to the board for discussion. Anyone would like to start us off?
Well, I'll just say yay. I think the massing of it is you've got several options, but I think there's several options the way I'm looking at it. But I think as far as the massing of it and having a rural look, I'm just very excited about what you're presenting tonight. I would be a fan more of the squared doors, but I'm willing to entertain, any of the finishes
Okay.
that you're to look at them and discuss those. I think that the massing, yes.
Holly?
Hey, can I ask a couple questions? I think you guys presented this last week, right after I had to leave, so I didn't get to see it then. And so can you just catch me up? So the brick one with the red doors was what you presented last time. And the feedback was that it was too fancy, it needed to be more farm-like. Is that right? Or-
That's what we took from the comments, yes.
Okay. Okay. I think I like this original one you had. Was the problem with it, is it too close to the church, which also looks like this? Is that why?
Yeah,
the
it
feedback
looks
was
like
that?
a piece has blown off into the
Okay.
field. And this, to me, I'm responding positively to these sketches. I think that this is definitely getting to what we had in mind, that you're in an agrarian area. And so it should relate more to that and those buildings on that side of the property. And then the church becomes a standalone piece of architecture.
Well, in that case, I think the sketches look nice too, so I would go with the feedback from all.
I like the sketches. Looking at them, is the lighter part frame and the bottom part brick?
That's the intention. That's kind of, again, it was our interpretation of what agrarian would be more like, right? It looks more like, like I said, farm-like, which a fully brick building is not necessarily agrarian.
Right.
Even though, and this is, I think, where the county and the church are having a hard time with it, is the understanding that the guidelines have been complied with from a civic building standpoint. So the suggestion that the materials change when the design as presented complies with the requirements is where the confusion lies.
And so if I could may address that some. So our guidelines, they speak to the context. I mean, technically, you could say, okay, this building in its materials used brick, meets the guidelines, but it has to do with its context too. Where is it located?
Yes, sir.
So the guidelines, they're broad, more and so that's what we're
contextual.
talking about, and contextual. And and I don't know if staff can pull this up or not, but it's on the Google Maps, and with a 3D view, as though you're flying there at Back Hatcher and looking back towards where this site is going to be, you can see that what buildings are in context.
Right.
And the buildings in context with the fire hall, where it's proposed to be, are the agrarian buildings and the McMahon House. I mean, the church is 2,000 feet away. And I think that was the concern of the board. If you match architecture of the church in that location, it doesn't fit that context at all.
Agreed.
As I was driving in tonight, I looked at Fleming Hall. I looked at the Visitor Center at Carnton and thought, you know, that's an inspiration for something that looks, a building that looks rural. Hadn't thought about it till I pulled in and thought about it in the context of this.
And Emily, can you make your angle so it looks back more towards, you know, where the cul-de-sac is? I'm calling it a cul-de-sac. And where the, so you can see the barns. There's actually the horse barn and then the old barn.
And then the church has really embraced farming too, on the site.
And you've got the farmer's market, and, you know, it's very much a part of that site.
So you're looking back more towards agrarian-type buildings.
That's right.
So that's your context.
Yes, sir.
So if I'm looking at the sketches, the top sketch with the three gables, you know, I just don't think you'd see that around here that much in agrarian. What you have in your middle two, where you have your pedestrian door, like it's an addition to the side, I think that's more successful. If you're just looking for feedback on that.
Yes, sir. Yes, absolutely. Because, you know, the feedback is super valuable, because we'll take that back to the church. They'll have these sketches. You know, they have their trustees, their board, and then their membership that were bought in on the initial design. So having some feedback on some conceptual designs that the city is leaning towards is super helpful.
And to me, this really respects the church architecture.
Yes.
More.
It becomes more standalone, the church
Yes.
building. And I think the simpler the form, the better. But definitely, the church building is unique, and it is a standalone. And I think this is much more sensitive.
Kathy?
Mr. Vice Chair, thank you for these lovely sketches. It was like, oh, goody, goody. One of my questions is the footprint of these, that these sketches or these elevations were based off of it. Are we in proportion to what you were proposing prior?
We
This
had about
looks
12.
tiny.
Yes, ma'am. No, understood. We had about 24 hours between the Historic Zoning Commission meeting and submitting information for this meeting. So we worked fast and furious, but they are sketches.
But
Obviously, the massing of the apparatus bays, you're getting larger trucks out of there. They're going to be bigger than garage doors on a house, obviously. And the height of that mass for a fire hall or an EMS station is traditionally larger. So that's about it, right, as far as the relationship between the smaller and the lower, which the original design has as well.
I think this is a excellent study, and I think the next connector for me would be translate that to the square footage that you're trying to accomplish, because if you go more this way, you may want to grab some more height. And so, to your comment, Brian, with the first three on the very top, don't mind the height if I've got, so there's a game, there's a playing with that I would like to see how you blend the two now. But this is excellent. I think you've gotten good positive response from everyone about it. And the other comment would be talking about the monumental sign. So location of that sign, I'm trying to remember where it's dropped in on the site. Is it closer to the church, or what is it closest to the new building?
It would be at the new building. So when you come in the main entrance, the sort of cul-de-sac there, you'll see it. It'll be in front of the building.
Okay.
Yeah, as a public safety facility, it's important that there's clear and substantial signage so that a person during an event would know that's where they're going.
Maybe
That's
give
very
some
neat.
thought as to how, because the one you proposed, definitely reads more attached to the church.
Right.
So maybe propose something that would be more attached to the new property. If you introduce brick as you showed on the sketches, I don't mind the brick on this as well. I think it's a nice complement, but consider maybe making that feel more like to the new building versus the church, because right now it reads the church.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Yes, appreciate your attention.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank
Is
you.
there already a sign on that corner for the church?
It's across the drive there, kind of on the, I guess what would be the east side of the entry into the property. Yes, right there.
And where would this sign be located in relation to that one?
It would be further back into like, right where the cul-de-sac is, where City of Franklin police cars usually park right there, it would be back in there.
So you think 100 feet away,
Yes.
more?
Yeah, I don't think there would be any confusion coming into the entry that sign would say leading you to a church. It's a cul-de-sac. You're not going down a road to get to the EMS station. It's pretty clear that the drive is there, the bays, it'll front the cul-de-sac fairly well. I think if you're talking about confusion from a wayfinding perspective.
Okay. Any other discussion on the monument sign?
Anything else you'd want to ask us?
No, ma'am. I think it's been very helpful. I appreciate your time.
Okay. Thank you.
I would make the comment, with it being a rural-looking building, there are a few brick rural-looking buildings, but there is cementia board now that really holds up, so I would love for that to be considered.
Understood.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Did you do what I did? Oh, gosh. Welcome to my world.
All right, next is item number 7, the discussion of new construction and site alterations at 151 Franklin Road, Riverview. Greg Gamble is the applicant.
Hi, Greg Gamble, and I'm here tonight with Patrick Poole with Capital P Ventures and Matt Berman. And I want to talk with you about an idea, a concept that Patrick and his team are bringing forward for discussion. When we started this process, we had several meetings with aldermen to talk about this as an idea, converting or having the Riverview House as hospitality. And they said, it's worth a discussion. It's worth a community discussion. Let's have it. We've decided to start here in this room with a DRC meeting first before we really proceed forward. Obviously, we've met with staff a number of times and talked with them about that. But very interested in having this dialogue and getting your input tonight. We have a brief presentation that Matt and Patrick would like to give. I'll let you jump in. You can
Great.
introduce yourself.
Thank you, Greg. As Greg mentioned, Patrick Poole. I'm on the development team for this project, and we're extremely excited to be here, extremely excited to present this opportunity and look forward to your feedback. We've got some things presented. We'll try to move quickly so we can leave ample time, but we can just stay on the screen for a minute as we introduce the project. So for 124 years, Riverview has stood as a quiet landmark along Franklin Road for generations. The property built in 1902 by Henry Mayberry. This home is living history. And during that time, the home and the grounds have been cherished by a private family home and horse farm. Set back behind its gates, it has been a hidden gem admired mostly from the road. That privacy has preserved its serenity and character, making it feel like a special secret of Franklin. Now we have an exciting opportunity to open those gates up to the public, inviting more of Franklin to experience this beauty and history firsthand. Our vision is to transform it into a luxury boutique hotel that truly belongs to the community, a welcoming place where residents and visitors can enjoy brunch on the porch, attend garden events under the trees, or join guided experiences to learn more about the Mayberry family and the property right on the grounds where it all unfolded. Many historic estates eventually outlive their original intended purpose as a family home or a working horse farm and struggle to keep up with the ongoing maintenance and upkeep. We have the valuable opportunity to preserve and reinvest in this property through thoughtful adaptive reuse as a boutique hotel. It's the same model that has saved countless historic estates, places like Old Edwards Inn in North Carolina, the Inn at Perry's Cavern in Virginia, and the Monmouth Historical Inn in Mississippi, all of which are inspirations for this property, and all of which started as private homes, opened thoughtfully to the public through boutique hospitality, and became community anchors, cherished more now than they were when they were locked away. That's how we look to keep Riverview alive, and that's our vision and why we're here. I can't tell who's in charge of the presentation. We'll flip over and we're excited to share the vision. But before we share more of the vision and some of the design features, we do want to take a minute to talk a little bit about the family history and significance of the property itself. We are privileged to have several members of the Mayberry family actually here in the audience, which is absolutely wonderful. But Henry Mayberry was a true Franklin local, born in 1861, educated here locally, moved out to Birmingham, and on his return, he bought this property in 1901, completed the neoclassical home in 1902, and made it one of the most advanced homes in the county with electric lights, indoor plumbing, and its own water system. Additionally, he pioneered the Franklin-Nashville Interurban Railway and donated a spring on his property to give Franklin its first reliable public water supply. Just brief background on the home itself. The property was built in 1902 as Riverview and is one of Williamson County's largest, most ornate, and least altered neoclassical homes, placed on the National Registry in 1988 for its architectural significance. The front features a massive two-story portico and elaborate entry. Original double doors with side lights and fan light transom. Detailing that includes the 9/9 windows, Doric porch elements, crown molding, curved staircase, and Greek Revival mantels. Now, this one's relatively easy because I believe everyone knows the site's location, but I did want to take the moment just to appreciate how this property really sits at a beautifully activated center between Harlansdale Farms, Franklin Factory, Bicentennial Park, and Main Street, which we've all seen luckily locally has continued to be activated with pedestrian traffic. The existing site plan outlines the existing structures on the site, which you can see here, the main house residence, the addition, the spring house that has since collapsed. On the left-hand side, a better image of the smokehouse, the barn, and the relocated cabin. Some of those are contributing to the National Registry, others are non-contributing, which we can touch on in a little bit. The next two slides are really just better visuals of the home itself and feature a lot of those architectural contexts that I just mentioned. On the site analysis page, I did want to stop and take a moment to talk about this. We have been extremely mindful of the historical context and the city's guidelines every step of the way throughout our planning process. Riverview was intentionally preserved as a standalone 15-acre lot when the property was subdivided in 2017 to create the Splendor Ridge neighborhood. Splendor Ridge is a separate 19-lot development with its own streets, HOA, and infrastructure, which you can see on the left-hand side of this map. This deliberate carve-out included buffers to protect the historic context, as well as not to be included in the existing subdivision. This map also shows the existing historical front setback along Franklin Road, keeping the large front yard intact to maintain the estate's prominence and protect the view sheds, exactly as Envision Franklin emphasizes. The site analysis page also depicts the side and rear setbacks, which we will be expanded upon when we work through the site plan. It also illustrates the floodplain and floodway. Now, before we flip over to the fun part, the vision and inspiration of the property itself, I did want to just introduce, obviously, Greg Gamble on the land planning and design side, but also Matt Berman of Workshop APD. We worked tirelessly to bring in a variety of architects, and we are very privileged to have brought in Workshop. They have an extensive experience in historic preservation, elaborate experience working in historic towns such as Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard, and Charleston, just to name a few. And I'm excited to have Matt on the team and walk us through the rest.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. As Patrick said, I get to talk about the fun part. I think what's really important here, again, and I appreciate the introduction, is that for the past 26 years, we have been working in historic areas, namely, like you said, places like Nantucket. The entire island, as you may know, is on the National Register of Historic Places, so everything we do there is very much guided by an understanding of preservation, heritage, and then obviously evolution, how we move forward into the future. And so we're always reconciling those two, right? We're always reconciling how you really take advantage of what makes a place special and how you allow it to live and adapt for contemporary life. And like Patrick said, some of these places have now kind of long past their use. And places like this do need or want, sort of deserve to have a new life breathed into them. And so what we wanted to do was just take you through a little bit of a kind of a visual display of what we're seeing. How we see this main house coming back to life, being able to receive the public, both people in the local neighborhood and visitors, really and treat them to a special experience on this property. So you can see here a lot of it is about really kind of refreshing the house. The house, it does, there has been some deferred maintenance. It does need, it does need to sort of be sort of brought back to life. And we think we can do this in a really wonderful way that keeps with honoring the tradition and the history of the house. So we can go to the next slide. This is getting into maybe what some of the social spaces might be. We've talked about having a local bar on the main floor, place that at night might have drinks, but in the morning might serve breakfast, might have coffee, things like that. Really just a wonderful place to sort of meet neighbors and convene. Go to the next one. Site and the landscape are incredibly important, and I'm probably stepping on Greg's toes a little bit here because he's really the landscape expert. But I think what's really important for us is that top center image that really celebrates the historic house. Now, obviously, that's not our house, but it really does talk about what is this pathway like coming off of the street, coming straight up to this house, really, really acknowledging the prominence of the house and inviting people into it. As we move back into the landscape, you're going to see that we're going to really be using sort of natural elements like stone walls, gravel paths, brick paths, things like that, that really start to tie the landscape in together. Sorry about that, that's my son calling me right now. But really kind of really allow people to explore this 15-acre site. It's really quite beautiful. It has amazing topography to it. And so once you invite the public in and allow them to move around, it's really quite an exciting place to be. We can also use a lot of the landscape to create buffers. One of the things that you saw on the initial site strategy map was the existing site buffers. You'll see as we get into it, we're really planning to increase those buffers quite a bit to create a lot of privacy to the surrounding homes. Site landscape, you're going to see some fun places to eat, dine, sit, relax. We go to the next slide. And then, of course, a restaurant. We really want to have an incredibly top-notch, great restaurant here that's serving great food, sourced locally, really bring people in, again, so that they can experience this firsthand and really have it be a wonderful gathering place. And given that more and more people are now walking back and forth, let's say, sort of along the road from the factory into town, we really think this would be an incredible stopping point. Spa and wellness, a property like this really deserves to have, sorry, that's my son. I hate to click him down, but I'm going to do it. But the idea of a really great retreat, right? This is not a space that isn't intended to be incredibly loud, incredibly populated, or anything like that. This is a place where people can come and really enjoy a nice private moment, gathering with groups of friends, spa, appointments and things like that. Now, from the site plan, you can see here, what you're really seeing is as we're coming off of Franklin Road, you can see that entry sequence. So if we start on plan right, you'll come in, you're going to see sort of whatever that is, whether it is something that is more landscape-oriented or water-based, something that really kind of celebrates kind of this arrival moment for the home. As you move down, let's say plan south, you're going to move down toward a parking area. And now, for those of you that know this site, you know that that's a fairly steep drop-off in grade. So that parking area really isn't visible from almost anywhere. I mean, you almost have to be climbing through the trees and bushes to see it. But as you come back through the main historic house, what we're doing is really thinking about the scale of the massing, right? So we've got the main house, which is about 40 feet tall. We're trying to really create an open air buffer on both sides of it. So plan north, let's say to the right of the house, is about 40 feet to the first structure, and plan south to the left of the house is about 60 feet to the first structure. The idea here, and you can see this in a lot of the notes, and you'll see this in the rendering, is that the structures begin to step up. In fact, we saw that in the past couple of projects where you take the massing down, you take the roof massing down, you let that allow that to be sort of, a one-story massing and allow that to climb back up. So we're doing that around the main house. The volumes around the main house are lower, 1.5 stories, and then they're going to start to climb up as you go around. And these probably give you the best kind of very preliminary kind of claymation white box models of seeing the main house and then seeing some of the structures, both camouflaged by landscape, but also reduced in height. So you can see the way that's that entry sequence. So we go into the next one, you can see a little bit more of an overhead language. Currently, there is a really beautiful walking path that takes you from the front of the property to the back of the property. We want to keep that. We think that for visitors and guests, that's an incredible sort of thoroughfare through the property. It's very sort of pedestrian friendly. On the right-hand side, you can see really where most of the building occurs. You're seeing most of let's say the spa toward the front, and then moving toward the guest rooms toward the back. We've increased the buffer along the back that fronts the houses that are in the subdivision. Coming around, you can see the barn structure. Again, that's going to be one of the taller, that and the main house are the two tallest buildings on the site. Nothing's going to exceed the height of either of those buildings. And then as we come around onto the left side, you're going to see massing that is then intentionally built into the hillside so that we're gaining potentially a lot of usable space, but nothing that's actually going to be sort of seen or visible or recognizable from the property or from the street. And tucking the parking underneath. So unless you're down in that watershed area, you're not really going to experience any of this mass. Finally, just in terms of comparisons for some local event venues, these are some of the local event venues that I'm sure you're all familiar with. We are proposing an event venue on site, but we just wanted to give some comparison to the size. So you can see these are the 4+ hours. If you go to the next page, you'll then see the size of those 4 other venues compared to ours. So ours is about 50 by 100. The best comparison is the South Hall Meadows, but it would only be one of those buildings, not 2. And then back to the site plan.
All right, thank you very much. Staff, would you like to comment?
So, the Riverview Historic Estate is located within the Franklin Road Historic District and is on the National Register of Historic Places. This proposal would need an Envision Franklin Plan Amendment, a preliminary Historic Zoning Commission recommendation, a rezoning and development plan approval, a certificate of appropriateness, and site plan approval. The applicant is requesting preliminary feedback on this proposal prior to an Envision Franklin amendment request. Envision Franklin's guiding principles recommend no further development on this property due to the previous infill development that established the site and setting of the historic resources and also the edge treatment used to buffer the new houses in Splendor Ridge from the historic site. The farm field boundary edge treatment was placed to the rear of the barn behind the outbuildings on this site. For the design guidelines analysis, this proposal doesn't meet the design goals for the Franklin Road Historic District, which are most notably providing an uncongested gateway into downtown Franklin, continuing to project an open, rural appearance, and maintaining the established rhythm and spacing of buildings relative to the established context. Staff has applied the section for new accessory structures to this proposal because the historic estate already has a main house and other outbuildings within its historic site and setting. If any new buildings are to be considered appropriate for this site, they should be accessory to the main house. The guidelines recommend locating accessory structures behind the rear plane of the principal building and place them in traditional locations in line with other visible accessory structures in the district. Locate new accessory structures to be secondary in prominence to the historic principal buildings. Design accessory structures so that their scale is subordinate in size, mass, and height to that of the principal building they serve, but in no case should they exceed 1.5 stories. And maintain the original location of historic accessory structures. The proposal overwhelms the site's historic buildings and meets none of these guidelines. In addition, staff has received a handful of emails and phone calls about this proposal to date, and these emails will be provided to the Historic Zoning Commission at a voting meeting should this proposal continue on to the Historic Zoning Commission. Thank you.
So we'll go to the board. Who would like to start us off?
I will. I really like this house, so I think it's exciting to have it open to the public and be able to have it more available and able to be seen. And the barn too as well, it sounds like that's already there, right? So, I love that part of it. I agree with staff though about the scale and having the other buildings compete with the main building. So I would be inclined to support it if it were more according to guidelines and having the buildings not be so close and large.
Thank you, Holly. Angela?
Gut reaction is, it's beautiful presentation, well done. You gave us great perspective. But it does look like a lot to be happening here, especially in this location, this major gateway and corridor into Franklin, and there's a lot already happening there. There's a lot to love, the boutique hotel aspect of it, the restaurant. Those things, I think, add to the community. But the scale of this is a lot at first, really at first glance. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Bob?
This appears a place I would really like. My concern is its location, the massing, the parking. I see an enormous amount of parking, and I think in some other aspects, since I've been on the board, we've been really concerned about a large amount of parking near residential area.
Thank you. Mary?
Yeah, I think it's just overwhelming. I don't think this house particularly has to see a future as a residence, but to me, this is overwhelming. I was trying to count the parking, and they said, I think you made the comment it wouldn't be that busy. Well, I think I got up to, did I get up to about 200 parking spaces? If I'm reading it right.
Yeah, can you tell us how many parking spaces you have?
And so I'm thinking, I know I've been to Monmouth before and Natchez. It's just much quieter, less. That's, this to me is like we're trying to create a whole visitor experience of everything in this one place.
Kathy, do you have any thoughts?
Oh, my, it is lovely. But this is a really hard one, and trying to minimize this down, be mindful of Envision Franklin, all the hit lists that Emily mentioned that you'd have to go before for variants and exceptions and stuff, so, and, you know, it's a beautiful adaptation, but it's a bit grand for the, like, you know, like it just dropped out of the sky. We're familiar with this house because we reviewed the entrance gates for them, and then that secondary exit, which I think you are maintaining to provide emergency service for Splendid Ridge. I really have to digest this deeper to try and minimize it. You flipped how we look at the main historical National Register home as being the smaller creature, and then the other things, all of the new buildings arise around it. So that's an opposite to how we view accentuating historical properties. It's hard to really put your finger on how would I shrink this down to meet the guidelines? How would I better meet the guidelines? So my suggestion to you is just that. How would you better meet the guidelines instead of running around it? I would feel confident in creating the landscape dimension that would buffer and accentuate and respect the site and all of those amenities that go along with creating this space. It's just hard for me to comment exactly what when the hit list is so grand. I applaud you for going in big, because you got to make the numbers work for taking on a venture like this. And it's fortunate and it's unfortunate that it's on Franklin. Right
It's the location that
heart.
really, I also appreciate how you approached landscaping as a buffer and to really envelop the whole property. That's all very positive. But I agree with Kathy that it's this particular location is making this much mass very difficult to take in. That's just gut reaction.
My question to applicants would be, what would be your next step to make this meet the guidelines better? I know you probably have to think about that too.
Yeah.
Well, I'm also going to enlist our trusted designers here on the panel, but just to answer some of the questions that were brought up. So parking, in a lot of developments, parking is obviously a major design issue and one that has to be really thought through on programming. We've been very strategic on where the parking's located, shielded not only out of sight from Franklin Road, but more importantly, shielded from the guest experience. When we're talking about developing a hospitality property like this, it's, you know, we dive all in on what can make this property special to the city, to its residents, to its guests, and one that, you know, hopefully we all look back and this property's here for 100 years and it's a landmark to the community. Well, to get there, you really have to be thoughtful of that guest experience. So shielding that parking from anyone that's a guest on site. So we've been specific on how that's located, using the topo and locating it into closer to the flood line, but also tucking it under that grade change building. The comment about the buffering and massing, I'm going to enlist Matt and Greg for a second, just to touch on our thought exercise of how we got here, breaking these buildings up into a lot of smaller buildings, and then really expanding them away from the historic structures was highly intentional. And I know you guys are tremendously used to looking at these from an overview shot, but this site particularly, for us, was unique because it is 15 acres, so these can feel heavier than they are when you're actually on site. And so maybe Matt touched on just the buffering.
Sure. I think you're 100% right when you say it's overwhelming. right? Let's just acknowledge that. You're used to seeing this site in a particular way. Many of you have been there. And it has a very pastoral quality about it, right? It was a horse farm, back in the day. So seeing this is definitely a shock, right? There's no question about it. Seeing this, you look at it and go, oh my God, there's a lot there. But to answer your question, I think first of all, it's incumbent on us to show you that there is a happy marriage here, right? It's our job to do that. I think when you were talking about sort of the idea that the scale of the massing is incredibly important, right? It's noted on here, but you can't see it. Right now, it's just a bunch of blocks. But the scale of the massing is important, right? We know we've got this almost 40-foot tall, 40-foot tall main house. The structures around it are 1 story, right? And then they build to 1.5 and 2. So the idea is that we're really kind of allowing those to pull away from the main house to create that buffer. Right? We want to be incredibly deferential to the main house. As you come back into the site, we're trying to load the majority of the density to areas that you don't see, right? To the back right corner, there's going to be a little bit more density there. You don't see it. It's about as far away from the main house and the barn as possible. And then building into the grade, another area that's almost found space because we've got this grade change. So that's just dealing with scale and massing. Then we get into the architecture. We want the architecture to also be sympathetic to the space. We're not trying to create a Disney version of this or kind of recreate the historic house, but we've looked in at a lot of the residences, for example, in the area in Splendor Ridge. We've looked at the black and white palette. We've looked at the sort of the tonality that's used that allow that house to stand out and allow the other structures to feel like they're part of that neighborhood. And I think ultimately that's our goal. We want you to step onto this property and feel in some ways that that it all sort of feels right, that it all feels like it has been there, right? You're not kind of coming on going, oh, that's that weird new thing that you said fell out of the sky, right? So I think that's our challenge, right? That's incumbent on us to show you that we can do this. But we believe, like Patrick said, that with 15 acres, the shock is the overhead bird's eye view, not in the experience of actually being on site.
So what is the height of the tallest building as you move back on the property?
Sorry, the tallest new building?
The tallest new building. You said the existing house is 40 feet.
40 feet, yeah. The tallest is going to be somewhere between sort of 25 and 30, I'm guessing.
So there won't be any building that's taller than the main structure?
No. Except the barn actually might be taller. I think the barn is actually taller.
As far as
But it's a historic structure,
as a
yeah,
new
correct.
building that you're
Correct.
building. To me, the most successful thing about the plan is that what I see is that there are no additions to the main structure and the barns, and that, to me, that is the most successful. And a bad example of that is Moreland, which is in Brentwood,
I was thinking of
which is
Moreland.
which has totally been destroyed, in my opinion, historically. So, I mean, that's a good positive thing. Where our guidelines are concerned, I would like, if this were to go forward, I would want to see the buildings set back totally behind the structure. And where we're showing currently the spa, I mean, it's really to the side. So if you were to look out kind of the side view of the house, you would see that building on the side. So I mean, and I think that the parking area that you've got down the hill is actually in the floodplain. So,
Part of it is, part of it isn't.
so I mean, that's an issue too, on this property.
Parking's permitted in the floodplain, in Franklin, but it's not permitted in the floodplain.
Sorry, that's right.
And that's going to be a consideration for us from what you see from Franklin Road, because it will be visible from Franklin Road.
Yeah.
So I mean, there are a lot of issues here. Any other comments from the board?
Well, if it goes against all of our guidelines, which this does, as far as, massing around the front particularly, show us a place this has been done that you think is successful. You said you've had a lot of experience, so show us something where, 200 plus cars have been brought on site and it's successful. on a gateway into downtown Franklin.
Got a very tight gateway.
And I would say it's not so much that it's just shocking from the change, it is change, but it does overwhelm the context. And I mean, part of what we go by in our guidelines, which is based on the Secretary of the Interior's standards, there should be minimal impact on the site and surroundings, with the planned project. So I mean, there's just a lot of hurdles, with this. Well, appreciate you bringing it forward. Did you have any other questions for us? Oh,
To
Kathy?
Mr. Vice Chair. Staff mentioned the new buildings are considered as accessory buildings.
Yes, ma'am.
Do they meet the number requirement for the site?
So for the site, you can have typically, you could have the agrarian barn, and then we have the two smaller accessory structures. So I believe that exceeds the maximum.
But the barn is existing, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
That still affects the count towards the new buildings? So all of the new buildings
Exceed.
exceed.
All right, any more questions or comments?
There is some concern that this property is not an equestrian property anymore. The barn is probably not going to be used for livestock or feed in the future. We've been having conversations with staff about this, long-range planning, and we understand the steps for approval, what we would need to do to move forward. The question that we've had, and I think staff has had too, is what do you think about this as an adaptive reuse? Are we wasting everyone's time? Should we continue to pursue this? Would you like us to bring back a new plan? Would you like a site visit? Would you like to continue this conversation? We're excited about it, but there are a lot of questions still that need to be answered, and we're in listening mode, and that's why we've come to you first. We agree that maybe we haven't answered all the questions yet. Maybe we don't have the perfect plan yet. We want to continue to work on that, and we would love to do that with you, with staff, and kind of work toward that effort.
I think it's premature. I mean, there's a lot of planning to do. There's a lot of buy-in to the community. There's a lot of buy-in with BOMA, with the Planning Commission. And, I would say, what's been presented here is way too much for the site. And I think I'd like to see it, if you're going to pursue it, you pursue it down those avenues, and then it can come to us later for a recommendation. I mean, that's how I would look at it.
I agree with that. And when you look at the comparisons that you've shown us, South Hall and Homestead and the barn at Sycamore Farms, those are all, they're way out by themselves. I really go back to the location here of this property. And it doesn't read expansive, from an emotional standpoint, relative to these other properties that you've shown us. So I think this close into the heart of downtown, it's just really difficult to sort of square those things. Does that make sense? This level of scale that you're showing us here, the massing, and I understand that we're looking at the tops of the buildings, we're seeing a bird's eye view. However, it's clear that what the size of the buildings are relative to the house and the site, and the parking, and, and you can see, you've plainly labeled, 1-story, 2-story, and I understand they won't be quite as high as the main house. However, it's just, I just keep going back to this much happening at that specific location. I just think it could be more sensitive to that location. The concept to me is a beautiful idea of a boutique hotel and a great restaurant. I'm all for it. I'd love it, would be a regular. But this is showing me a lot. My immediate response to this is, whew, wow.
And this, it still has a lot of residences around it, including some that were sold by selling off part of this. And then they're gonna have, with this much, the dumpsters, the deliveries, I mean, we're not telling that part of the story.
Food trucks.
That comes with it, the lighting. So I think when you're going forward with it, I would show it in the context of all the residences around it.
And it's important it does not meet our guidelines.
And it doesn't meet
Yeah,
our guidelines,
yeah.
for sure. And then the city's saying it doesn't meet their guidelines. But would we love to have a beautiful inn? Of course.
Yeah.
But maybe that, you know, it's a more scaled down something here, much more scaled down.
More exclusive.
Thank you, Mary. Angela, thank you. Thanks for coming.
Yes, thank you.
Make the presentation.
Great presentation.
And glad you're visiting Franklin.
So, staff announcements.
Mr. Chair, the deadline to apply for the March 9th Historic Zoning meeting is this Friday, February 20th by midnight. And please be on the lookout for emails from the Law Department regarding their annual training that's going to be upcoming. And we will be starting to poll you all for a date for our annual Historic Zoning Commission training, so be on the lookout for communications from staff regarding this. Thank y'all.
Excellent.
I'd like to ask staff before we adjourn. We have done drive-arounds before, and we haven't done it in a few years, and we've got new members, and I would love us to consider that.
Okay.
We will certainly consider that.
Have you seen it?
All right, excellent. So I think we're adjourned.
Do we need
We don't need to move to
Okay,
adjourn
we're
tonight. No,
done.
we're casual.
Okay,
It's
that's true.
over.